Hey guys, today we're going to study about the skull again, and now we're going to see the lateral view of the skull. So it means that when we're looking at the skull from the lateral side, from the ear side, above the ear, that is the lateral view of the skull. Now what are the structures we see? We're going to study today. Number one, you can see this structure. This is called as the frontal bone. Then you see this structure present here. This is called as your zygomatic bone. Then you see this small hole, or you see a small circle present. That is called as the zygomaticofacial foramen. Then you see here towards this part, this is called the temporal part of the zygomatic bone because it is moving towards the temporal bone. That is why it is called the temporal part of the zygomatic bone. Then you come here. Now you enter into what is called as your temporal bone. This line, you can see this one. This is called as your coronoid process. Then you see here this small type structure. Wait, let me make it clear to you. This structure you can see right here. This one. This is called as the styloid process. Then you see next to the styloid process this type of depression or a small circle. This is called the tympanic part of the temporal bone. Then come here to this round big structure. The bottom of it or the base of it, this is called the mastoid process. And this whole thingy is called the mastoid part of the temporal bone. Then you see behind it you will enter into what is called as your occipital bone. And present between the mastoid part of temporal bone and the occipital bone, you have this suture. That is called as your suture name of occipito-mastoid suture. Present between the occipital bone and the mastoid bone, there is a suture called the occipito-mastoid suture. Now coming to here, this structure. Here you can see this wing-like structure that is called as your sphenoid bone, and this part of the sphenoid bone is called as the greater wing of the sphenoid bone. Here you can see this is a flat part that is called the squamous part of the temporal bone. Present between the squamous part of the temporal bone and the greater wing of the sphenoid bone, you see there is a suture. That suture is called as your spheno-squamous suture. Present above the squamous part of the temporal bone, there is a suture that is called as your squamous suture. And present between the greater wing of the sphenoid bone and the parietal bone, there is a suture called as your squamo-parietal suture. And the place where the spheno-parietal suture, the squamous suture, and the squamo-sphenoid suture meet, they're going to form a structure called as the Petri. And that was all for the lateral view of the skull. Now, coming to the superior view of the skull. When we look at the superior view of the skull, we see these structures, right? This is the superior view of the skull. And this superior view of the skull comprises of your bones. This forward bone, this is called the frontal bone. These two are the parietal bones. Followed by here on the back, you will see that is called as the occipital bone. Now, present between the frontal bone and the two parietal bones is a depression or a suture. That suture is called as the coronal suture. Present between the two parietal bones, there is this midline suture called as your sagittal suture. Then you see on the back side here, you see from here, this structure, this suture. This is present between the parietal and the occipital. That is called as the rhomboid suture. Now present on the frontal suture, you see here. We told you that between the frontal and the parietal bone you had a suture. And that suture was called the coronal suture. Now, exactly at the center of it, here it is shown here, this one. This is called as your bregma, right? So, at the center of your coronal suture is called the bregma, which is indicated by this red mark. Same is the case here, that present between your parietal bone and the occipital bone, you had the rhomboid suture, and on its center you have called the lambda. And here in the parietal bone next to this sagittal suture, you have a foramen, and that is called as the parietal foramen. That was all for your superior and lateral view of the skull. Hope this helps it, and for more videos, do like this channel. Thank you.